Constantly Risking Absurdity by Lawrence Ferlinghetti. Constantly risking absurdity and death whenever he performs above the heads of his audience. The poet, like an acrobat, climbs on rhyme to a high wire of his own making, and balancing on I-beams above a sea of faces, paces his way to the other side of day, performing entrechats and sleight of foot tricks and other high theatrics, and all without mistaking anything for what it may not be. For he's a super realist who must perforce perceive taught truth before the taking of each stance or step in his supposed advance towards that still higher perch where beauty stands and waits with gravity to start her death-defying leap. And he, a little Charlie Chaplin man, who may or may not catch her fair eternal form spread-eagled in the empty air of existence. Lawrence Ferlinghetti was born in 1919 and he died in 2021 in San Francisco. He wrote Constantly Risking Absurdity in 1958, and this was published in 1958 in a collection of poems called A Coney Island of the Mind. This Coney Island of the mind gave a glimpse into the circus of the soul. All the poems were written in free verse, and they all have unconventional structures. If you look at my playlist, you will realize that I have read several poems on the theme of writing about writing. And Constantly Risking Absurdity offers an unusual extended metaphor on this idea. I am drawn to constantly risking absurdity, not only by the unusual extended metaphor that compares the activity of a poet writing to the activity of an acrobat performing on a high wire, but also by his playful exploration of poetic techniques and by the pictorial layout of the poem on the page. The poem immediately strikes one as being unconventional, as there is very little punctuation, There are no stanzas as such, and yet the poem may be said to be composed in 3 parts, as there are 3 sections that begin with a capital letter. The first one focuses on the acrobat. The second focuses on the poet, and the third skillfully brings the poet and the acrobat together. The first section begins, constantly risking absurdity and death whenever he performs above the heads of the audience. The poet, like an acrobat, climbs on rhyme. The position of the acrobat is neatly delineated as we are drawn into the performance, the act. The lines vary in length, and the reader's eyes travel along the first line, dropping down onto the ledge of the second line, leaping onto the third line, and so on, mimicking the movements of the acrobat. The diction draws us vividly into the fears of the acrobat as he performs above the heads of his audience. The first line echoes the title, constantly risking absurdity and death. It makes clear the acrobat's fear of looking absurd, silly, or ridiculous rather than elegant and beautiful. The reader's eyes, rather than travel to the left of the page conventionally, literally fall down the page onto the stark line and death, portraying the fear and the finality of death, the ultimate failure. The words, whenever he performs, above the heads of his audience, and the enjambments that run unstintingly throughout the poem mimic the continuous graceful movements of the acrobat's performance far above the heads of the audience. The shape of the poem is arranged visually as the rungs of a ladder. Yet our eyes drop down the page as if in warning, and the pun becomes clear as the simile compares the actions of the acrobat to the craft of the poet and the risk of failure in trying something new, performing above the heads of the audience. The risk for the poet being that your audience may not understand your work. It recalls the words of T.S. Eliot in the love song of Alfred Prufrock. Dare I disturb the universe? Great artists, original artists, risk being misunderstood. Hence, Vincent van Gogh sold only one painting in his lifetime. The comparison between the poet and the acrobat's activities is suggested in the poet, like an acrobat, climbs on rhyme to a high wire of his own making. The delightful touch of the poet's virtuoso poetic license as he changes the spelling of rhyme, R-H-Y-M-E, to rhyme, R-I-M-E, to enhance its visual similarity to climb, C-L-I-M-B, whilst rhyming, climb and rhyme, provides a dazzling display of his poetic tricks. This is compared to the awe-inspiring acrobatic performance as they both climb to a high wire of their own making. Both the poet's and the acrobat's performance is under scrutiny, as the hyperbole suggests, and the control of pace is vital to the artistry of each performance, as is aptly displayed in "and balancing on I-beams above a sea of faces, paces his way to the other side of day, performing entrechats and sleight of foot tricks and other high theatrics." The astonishing and awe-inspiring entrechats on the high wire are matched by clever puns, where sleight of hand tricks in words slips virtually imperceptibly into the compound word sleight of foot tricks, with the word tricks mimicking and mirroring the sound of theatrics. The importance of precision is highlighted in "and all without mistaking anything for what it may not be." The word anything is written as two words, anything. For poet and acrobat have to be super aware of every detail in performing their heroic journey, their quest for beauty. Mistakes and misperceptions could lead to failure and even death, literal for the acrobat and metaphoric for the poet. Although nothing may disturb the smooth flow of enjambments from the beginning to the end of the poem, the grace of performance, the notes, the use of capital F introducing the next section, where the poem seems to focus more sharply on the activity of the poet. For he's a super realist who must perforce perceive taught truth before the taking of each stance or step in his supposed advance, towards that still higher perch where beauty stands and waits with gravity to start her death-defying leap. In this way, Felinghetti highlights the importance of the twin realities for a poet: truth and beauty. These twin realities were also emphasized by John Keats in the enigmatic conclusion of his great poem, Ode on a Grecian Urn. Beauty is truth, truth, beauty. That's all ye know on earth, and all ye need to know. For Felinghetti, the poet is a super realist. He needs to be supremely in touch with truth. This is emphasized forcibly by the alliteration, for he's the super realist who must perforce perceive taught truth. The poet cannot afford to be slack for one moment. Truth must be taught as the high wire of his own making. Before the taking of each stance or step in his supposed advance towards that still higher perch where beauty stands and waits. The enjambments effectively propel us forward towards the ultimate goal, beauty, while the lines on the page continue to mimic visually the high wire and the ladder. The pace is carefully measured to suggest both the meticulous and careful performance of the acrobat, and especially that of the poet as he plans to attain beauty. Interestingly, in a poem which minimizes punctuation of any kind, the fact that beauty has a capital letter suggests that it is elevated above truth. The idea of a personified beauty standing and waiting at a still higher perch brilliantly incorporates the idea of the beautiful acrobat waiting to perform just before the reader's eyes drop down and down on the page. Beauty's vulnerability is plain as she waits with gravity to start her death-defying leap. The pun on gravity conveys both seriousness and the danger. It brilliantly conveys both hope and despair as she is waiting to start her death-defying leap. The alliteration and the compound word infuse the phrase with an emotional charge that allows the reader to believe that it is possible to succeed despite the odds being against us. We share the hopes and fears of both the acrobat and the poet. The last section of the poem, introduced by a capital letter, heightens the vulnerability of the poet, who metaphorically transforms into a little Charlie Chaplin man. The words all run together without any capital letters to give them importance. They imply that the poet's grand endeavors in trying something new may simply result in him becoming a ludicrous figure running this way and that, who may or may not catch her fair eternal form, spread-eagled in the empty air of existence. The poet risks the absurdity and inelegance of falling short of public expectations, of resulting in public failure, the loss of reputation and readership. The reader is left with the image of beauty, having taken that leap of faith. The poet foregrounded as the comedian running about ludicrously attempting to catch her fair eternal form. As John Keats said in another poem I have read on my channel, Endymion, a thing of beauty is a joy forever. Felinghetti fears that he may not catch her fair eternal form, spread-eagled in the empty air of existence. Spread-eagled becomes a single word, as the fair eternal form of beauty risks becoming caricatured, spread-eagled, diminished of grandeur in the empty air of existence. Merely existing as a poet may become a rather hollow thing, empty, meaningless. Although the conclusion is full of fear of failure, the poem ends subtly, leaving the reader wondering if the poet did or did not catch beauty's fair, eternal form. Having given a virtuoso performance displaying sparkling tricks of his trade, Felinghetti leaves the reader with a subtle invitation to judge for themselves. Please remember to click the bell below and subscribe, and visit me at my website formuse.org.